And I currently work as a scientist at a company called Freenome, in which we are a building platform for cancer diagnostics.
Very good. Wonderful. How about Busola? Do you want to go next?
I will try if my internet doesn't cut out. So I'm really excited to be here. Hi, everyone. My name is Busola. I'm from Lagos, Nigeria. I did high school there and came to the US in 2011 to attend Kenyon College, where I studied neuroscience. And I was pre-med, but I discovered a love for research, and that kind of propelled me to work for 3 years as a technician or research assistant at Harvard Medical School. And that made me decide to apply for a PhD. So I'm currently a third-year PhD student in the program in neuroscience at Harvard.
Wonderful. How about Janina? Do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah. Hi, I'm Janina. I am currently in my 5th year at Cal Poly San Luis Obispo, and my major is materials engineering, but in my 3rd year, I decided to pursue dentistry. So right now I'm going back and taking those bio classes that weren't originally my major to get those prereqs in to apply to schools this summer.
Very cool. And Daniela?
Hi, everyone. My name is Daniela. I'm a senior at Harvard College. I'm studying electrical engineering. I was born and raised in Puerto Rico. And I guess a little bit of my journey to college, I actually went to a small all-girl high school, and where I was able to dive deep into very different STEM areas through extracurriculars, outreach programs, and I actually went through the admission process knowing very little, but learning along the way. So that's one of the reasons I actually think this panel is great, and I thank Alice for inviting me, and I hope you guys take great advantage from it. Yeah.
Very cool. Awesome. Wonderful. Wonderful. So excited to dive in. The first thing we want to talk about, and these are going to be open questions. So panelists, you can jump in wherever you would like to contribute. We'll use the unmute as kind of the signal that you're ready to speak. So the first question is related to your personal experience in applying to college. And I think you can point out any advice or tips as you go, but I think many people out there are interested in just understanding, what you apply to, how many colleges, balance of safeties or reach schools, things like that, how you approach the college application process.
I can say, similar to Daniela, I had no idea about the college application process. I was in Nigeria doing this, and so a lot of the schools I applied to, I'd never seen. And I spent a lot of time on the internet trying to figure out what kind of environment the school was. I ended up applying to Kenyon, my alma mater, because of the cafeteria menu. I was like, I can totally eat these things. And so I applied, and I'm glad it worked out. But I would say I ended up applying to 15 colleges because I was international. That was a lot. I don't recommend that people do that, but I would recommend having a spread of numbers of schools of different styles. I knew that I wanted to be in a liberal arts institution, and so I applied to all liberal arts colleges. And they were all smaller colleges because I knew that I didn't want to be in a big school. And at the end of the day, it just came down to the essays, and it came down to getting a feel for the school through being on the website and all the promotional videos that they had.
Yeah, I'm going to share my experience. I think it's a little bit different because, as I mentioned, I first went to community college, and then I applied for undergrad. So if you have questions later about community college, I'll be happy to answer. But my transition into that community college to college, where I ended up was at UCLA, where I did my undergrad. But at that point, I think, I applied to 5 schools, and I just did a combination of which ones are closer to home and which ones are farther to home. But I think one of the things that is important is to identify, like to work with the counselors. I think like in different, like either in college, in high school, community college, undergrad, you're gonna have those counselors there, because as well, I knew that I wanna go and finish a bachelor's degree in science, but I didn't know much about it. So what I did is I went and I sit with a counselor and I told that counselor like what I was looking for and what I wanted, but I didn't know how. So she had me like different papers that I can read, and in which I contain like other information that I need in other classes that I have to take to transfer. The process is called transfer. So I think that's the first thing, like, yeah, make use of people like counselors that you have, and they are going to guide to you, and then start like making a list of the schools that you want to apply, and also that they make a list of like the requirements. What are the requirements that they each one want, and then start like making a plan of how you're going to fulfill those requirements. I think from high school you start early, like maybe 10th grade, when you start looking into that. If it's later in community college, start like as soon as you get there, start making a plan for that. And also like don't forget the deadline. So they are very important into those options. It's like this is a deadline, and then so have like everything ready for that. So for me, like I was able to go to visit on-site schools, like for example, like UCLA, Irvine, Riverside. Those were some of the schools that I applied. I was able to look in person. So if you have that opportunity, I think also it's great just to see the vibe and figure it out. Like if you like there, and also you can chat with some people that are already like students. I think that's really good, because that's what I did. And also if you're a school, like sometimes they have these like field trips where you can go and like look for a day at a university or college. I think take advantage of that, because you are able to learn, to have more insight, and also get to know like students.
Very good. And I also just wanted to interject. So for those who are not familiar, community college systems can be different throughout the U.S. California has a really great one that, many people now are using is this kind of intermediate between high school and college to get a lot of credits out of the way and save money when you actually go to your undergrad institution. So it's becoming more and more popular over there. And it's really cool, Julia, to hear your experience with that. Great.
So for me, I went to a very competitive high school, and it was like very intimidating applying for colleges because people were very vocal about like their grades and like how they were doing in school. So like hearing someone else be like, "Oh, I'm applying to this school," at times I was like, "Okay, should I be applying to this school?" and considering it like at that rank that it was for me. So my advice would be to like tune out everyone else and like make your own conclusions about the school. Of course, it's important to like listen to people's input, but at some point, I think that you should form your own opinions about the different schools you're looking at. And kind of looking at the questions here, like as far as grades go, like there's nothing you can do to go back and retake like your junior year of high school. You should just continue to like do your best in school and like hope that it was enough, And as far as like community colleges go, like I myself didn't go to community college, but I was an orientation leader for my college for community college students. And a lot of them are really successful and like really know their stuff. I have a few friends who like came to school. They're very like, they did 2 years of community college, then they were here, got an internship, then did 1 more year, finished their senior year, and then got hired like right away. So I think that's a good route if it's for you, but it's also not for everyone.
I guess I can speak a little bit about my experience. So, because I went to high school in Puerto Rico, the application process for colleges in Puerto Rico is very different. So that's like all I knew. And then like applying to US schools was like, you know, kind of like studying abroad, but not necessarily, but it's a whole different process, definitely more time consuming, different tests, and a lot of things to include in the application. So I think for trying to learn that process of applying to college in the US, I actually reached out to my counselor in the school, similar to Julia, and I also spoke to friends or students at my high school who already graduated, who were actually studying in the US, to kind of learn about the process and, you know, just, hey, when do you think I should do this? When do you think I should do that? And who should I reach out? So kind of understanding that. I think in my school, going off from Janina's point, we were like 35 students in the class. And I think the most common thought was like, everyone's going to stay locally. So kind of going out was kind of different, and, you know, definitely a different schedule or like work that you had to do to kind of apply up to like colleges in the US. I applied to a total of 11 colleges, 10 in the US and then 1 back home. And in terms of reach and safeties, I would say I applied to 5 reach schools and 6 safeties. And I kind of like looked at what areas I was interested in. I was actually interested in engineering, didn't know what specifically. I kind of looked at programs. I looked at locations too, considering, you know, in terms of flying to the location, the state or whatever, I wanted to be fairly close. Like, for example, California would have been a bit far from me, so kind of stayed away, but I did apply to a school there. And then Boston, of course, was a good location. There are tons of schools there too. So those sort of things.
Yeah, I just want to add a little bit of the international perspective. I just want to remind everyone, I know sometimes there seems to be an expectation that when you're a senior in high school, you must have a very clear idea or like slightly solid idea of what you want to do next. And if not, then, you know, you may like blow up your future. And that's not true. So I just want to tell you, like in my case, as I said, I went to college in Peru. I only found out you could go to grad school after college when I was finishing college. So just to give you an idea, and I still went, you know, and had an amazing time at Stanford. So I just wanted to remind you all, I remember someone already said it, right? Like you can't go back into the past and retake those tests and so on and so on. Yes, it's true. It's very important to make a list of the things that you're looking for, but also make sure you enjoy this process, have fun, and, you know, just remember that the decisions you're making right now is based on the information that you have right now. Don't be too hard on yourself as well. And that's why panels like these ones are so important. The fact that you're already listening to all this advice is already a huge step. So yeah, just make sure you enjoy the process, and just wanted to add that to what everyone else has already said, which is
wonderful. Well, thank you all for that. That was really great. And I guess building on that, then, now that you guys do have that 2020 hindsight vision, what would you say are some of the most important factors for choosing a college, right? Which ones are the ones that mattered most to you, perhaps at the time? And then, you know, with this hindsight vision, what do you think are the most important factors in general?
I can start that with saying if you have a slight idea of what you're interested in, then a place that can help you grow in that area. In my case, I was between marketing and biology. I ended up deciding to become a biologist. So where I ended up going, they had lots of research labs there. So even though I didn't know about grad school back then, even though I had no, you know, like ideas like that, I still, you know, had the opportunity to do research in labs. So I would say that's a big thing. Like if you are very into science, make sure it has, you know, those areas of research that you would like to, you know, like do during, not only during summer, but also throughout the school year. So that was one main thing that helped a lot. in my professional career. And also that's a healthy environment. Like talk to the students beforehand, make sure those research labs, in my case, are places where you can actually learn and not just work and do manual things, but actually, grow not only professionally, but also personally.
Yes, for me was like, I have like two phases, the community college phase, because those are like the 2 years, and then to complete the college, so two more years. So just a little bit, I think sometimes community college is good to help you to get, in my case, was to get a speed up into my language, because my English was not very good and was not a college level. So I think sometimes if there is something that has to be polished, there is opportunities that you can take to get ready for that. So in my case, that was that, and like community college was really helpful into that aspect. And also at that time, also I was starting considering like what I was interested on, and my interest was into the sciences. So I think like within the first semester, I'm like, yeah, I wanna continue. I wanna do science. So I start looking into the classes that are like science that I have to get, and also look into the requirements of the different universities that I was planning to apply. So that was for the first phase, like get ready for those programs that I was planning on applying. And then once I moved into at UCLA, where I did my undergrad, I applied to 5 colleges. I didn't got accepted into one, and then for the other ones that I was interested, for me was looking into like what is the program that I want to get, and since I was like already in my junior year by the time I entered to UCLA, so I kind of have a more target idea of what I was looking for, and for me was like an array of classes that is gonna be I'm gonna be getting to get my degree, but also which other opportunities in communities I can be part of. At that point, I didn't knew like I want to do a PhD or in which area, but I knew that there were like programs that could help me with that. So also I knew that there were like a major in research, in biomedical research, that can help me to get into a lab and then get the experience that I need. So I think it's also like in addition to the degree that you are getting, also look into which other programs can enrich your experience and what you are thinking you want to get out of undergrad. So those were like the areas. And also sometimes you have to decide whether you want to be like closer to home, farther to home in those areas also as well. I think it's personal of each student. Like what do you prefer? For me, what like closer home, 2 hours and a half, because my parents live like very close to LA, 2 hours and a half with traffic, versus 7 hours here in like up north. So what like those decisions, but that's personal.
I can add a little bit to that. I think we've heard really amazing like pieces of advice. I applied to 15 colleges, and I only got into 2 of the colleges that I applied to. So it was a really stressful experience for me. And I would say looking back on that, what was really important when I was applying to college or picking the colleges I would apply to was first that I would have a liberal arts experience, because I was really interested in science, but I also really wanted to write, and I wanted to improve my like poetry. So I really wanted to go to school that would give me the opportunity to sample different things. And so that was really important, and I was picking schools like that. But then the other thing I wanted was, so I was like, my family's Catholic. I wanted to be able to practice my faith in the school. So that was also a criteria I was looking for. In all the colleges I looked at, I was like, where is the nearest church? And then being Nigerian, I wanted a school that had like an African Students Association, like a place where I would feel like I was at home. I mean, just to say that there were a lot of factors that played into the decision for which school I would go to. I even looked at things like the athletic facilities. Was there a swimming pool? You know, I didn't want to go to the gym, but the swimming pool was important. And so I would say like, when I made my list, I drew up all the schools I was interested in. and had like little like check marks for all the things I wanted. You know, what's the cafeteria menu like? Are the students nice? And all these things. And like looking back now, when I got into college, you know, and went to college, I found the sheet of paper that I'd done that for. And Kenyon, the school I ended up going to, was the only school that had every single box checked. And it's just like crazy when you think about it. And I want you guys to really feel, as stressful as this experience is, you will end up at a school that is the best school for you. And just have that faith that, you know, as difficult as it may be, you know, you end up at this school. And because of finding a school that's a good fit, that has all these things you're looking for and more, you know, you don't have to worry as much. I think someone asked in the Q&A about applying to schools that are super selective. I think after I got into Kenyon, I didn't hear about any Nigerians getting in for my cohort for like 5 years. And I was just like, oh, I thought it was super easy. It's not. But like that kind of made me feel extremely lucky, you know, to get that opportunity. And I would say that you should just have that faith that it's going to work out for you and you're going to end up somewhere that is the best place for you.
Oh my gosh, I feel so scatterbrained today. But the things that were most important to me at the time were location of the school and size, because the summer before I applied to schools, I did this like pre-college program in Philadelphia. Like it was at Drexel University, which is like right across the street from UPenn. And it was an engineering program, and that's how I decided. That's how I chose my major. But it's like in Philadelphia, and I hated the city. I mean, it was like beautiful in its own thing, but I like even being there for 2 weeks was like, I could not live in the city. So that was like a major thing for me, because right after that, I took all of the schools that were in cities off my list. And then I also realized that like the food kind of mattered to me, because those 2 weeks I ate so badly. And like some people came back from schools that I knew and they were like, I haven't eaten fruit in like days. And I was like, what? Anyway, so that was that. And then size-wise, I knew that I was a person who can be kind of shy in classes. So I wanted to go to a school that was medium-sized, where it wasn't small enough that I felt like the pressure of going to a small school, but small enough that professors would get to know me without me being so like aggressive about it. Like I wouldn't have to go like introduce myself and like do all these things. Which you should still do, but at some of the bigger schools, I hear that like, you have to do it very aggressively, but big enough that it wouldn't be the pressure of such a small school. And something that I wish I considered more looking back was quarter system versus semester system. Like I love the quarter system now. If you don't know what the difference is, semester system, your like semester is like 13 weeks of like instruction versus the quarter system is 10 weeks. I think it's 13 or 15. But I really like the pace of a quarter school, and I don't know if I would have succeeded in the same way if I went to a semester school. Yeah.
I guess I'm the last to comment in this area, but I think as mentioned before, location was very important to me. I wanted a quick flight from Puerto Rico to the location, but also definitely having like Busola mentioned, like religious, like I'm Catholic, so having churches and in a center that I could actually go out to, like not only on campus but outside of campus. So like a location, a city that would actually help me like actually grow in other areas as well. And I think I had the opportunity to visit Boston for the first time, actually, between my junior and senior year. And I fell in love, which, I could be biased because I haven't visited many other cities in the US. But the vibe of, so many schools there, it just feels like, a city of students. And I really appreciated that. So academic, like research opportunities, just it was amazing for me. So I think that's why I kind of chose that location. For the program, I think another question between like choosing when you're doing a career in STEM is thinking about like a tech school versus a liberal arts sort of education. I initially, coming out of high school, I didn't know exactly what was, for me or what I really wanted. I think when applying, I actually try to, balance it out. Eventually, when looking at, how many colleges admitted me, I realized that there was kind of similar to what was mentioned before, like when you apply and you get rejected or admitted, it's because, those schools are the right ones for you. And the colleges make sure that, they choose students that are right for their campus, for their environment. So I realized that perhaps the liberal arts education was best for me, and I eventually loved it. I'm actually I really like the well-rounded education. I was also interested in other areas outside of STEM. So really going for a liberal arts education really allowed me to explore other areas that were outside of STEM. And I think size was also important to me. Like I said, I went to a very small school. Like Janina, I could be very shy in classes, and I didn't want it to be too big, but also like not too small, so I can just meet people every day. And that's how it has been for me. And also community. I think within like the students that were from Puerto Rico, we were able to build, they already had like a very good community. They would meet every other time. Again, like for example, there is an organization called HOLA, which is the Harvard Organization for Latin Americans, so internationals. So I think I was able to build that that community by also like understanding like the diversity in the student body and the groups that are on campus already. And I think lastly, probably financial aid was an important factor for me, and I really considered it.
That's excellent. Yeah, and I was noticing if you weren't going to mention financial things, I was about to bring it up. I mean, we touched a little bit on this with the community college thing, but I mean, money does matter, right? And I don't know if any of you panelists want to comment anything additional on that. I felt extraordinarily fortunate when I got into Princeton to get the financial aid package that actually enabled me to be able to go to Princeton. Because so many of my classmates graduating with debt was really very crippling, right? To have these massive loans, you're like always trying to, you're like keeping your head above water as you try to pay that off. So I think the financial aspects is a really a big consideration. I don't know if anybody else wants to say anything about that.
I can say that was a really important aspect for me. And I mentioned that I applied to 15 colleges. And the reason I only got into 2 of the 15 I applied to is that every single one of them had to be able to give me financial aid as a non-US citizen. And so this meant that they were top tier, like really selective colleges, because they were those colleges that had the money to afford me. And I was really lucky to be able to get like an amazing ride to go to Kenyon. But not just that, there was a lot of support at Kenyon because a portion of my financial aid was a loan. And my parents didn't know about this, so I actually paid this off myself while I was in college. Don't tell them. But it involved like working during the school year and working over breaks. And Kenyon had so many opportunities for its international students to have jobs to be able to pay off that loan. So I actually graduated debt-free, which is something that a lot of people are not able to say because of the support that their school provides. So I think you should look into if finances are an important like aspect of your application or just something that's important to you to have, you should don't feel afraid to like call the school and ask them, like, honestly, I'm interested in your program and I would like to hear about your financial aid package. And I just want to know what support you have for students from who require financial assistance. And I think like a lot of schools are really willing to share information with you and to help you make your decision, because then if the school is not able to provide what you need, you're just like, okay, not applying there. And that saves you application money.
I think the other thing to consider too is like external scholarships, because I applied to a lot my senior year, and senior year I think is when you can get really the most out of external scholarships. As an engineering major, I was able to apply there. The more specific the scholarship is, the easier it is to get. So I highly recommend looking into that also, but then being aware that you have to keep applying to them just because they're usually like 1 year. I actually went to a very like relatively like perspective-wise cheap college. Like my annual tuition without financial aid is like $9,000. And I know a lot of people who go to my school with a very clear vision of what they want to do after their undergrad. So they kind of use it as like a stepping stone, just to have like a cheaper undergrad, just to meet like the requirements to apply then to later schooling that will then cost them more money. So that's like another strategy I know that people have done, which is what I'm going to do because dental school is going to be outrageously expensive.
Yeah, I want to add to that, I went to community college, so I already save a lot of money just there. But also, in addition to the external scholarships, you also can look it up, like associations. Some of the big like societies, like they can give you grants for not only 1 year, but for 3 years. So I think it's like something to look into in terms of like external scholarships. I got one, so I was able to get some of my expenses covered through that, without worrying, like being applying different years. And in addition to that, like as well, like once you go into college, into the university college, also you can ask them like which other type of programs or fellowships they have. Like for example, focusing on STEM, like different universities have different programs that they help you, not only mentoring, like giving you like somebody else upper class mentoring, also like a professor, but also they give you a stipend to help you to keep, for example, in my case, to work in the lab, and at the same time, like go to school without having to have like an extra job. So my job was actually working in that lab. So those are also like things that when you're looking into different universities, you can ask for, like what other programs are out there, fellowships that you can take advantage as you move into your undergrad life.
Wonderful, wonderful. And the last thing that we wanted to talk about is like a little bit honing in on the STEM aspect. And I think, people have touched on this in different ways throughout, so that's really great. So I'll take the opportunity to first like summarize a little bit of that is kind of like backdrop in light of as we approach this STEM question. I think what a lot of you have mentioned is this is really like a holistic kind of question, where you go to school. It's a whole package thing, right? Where you're going to thrive, where you're going to be happy in your personal life, as well as like what's going to be a good thing for you academically and future professional launching. And I think another thing that came up that I just want to highlight and emphasize over and over again is that everything is what you make of it. Right. No one given failure is the end of a road. Right. And no program, even if you didn't get into that one, you think this school is like the best thing ever and you don't get in, it's going to be okay. Right. Everything is what you make it. And there's so many great schools out there. And there's really no reason why you're going to be held back at any given moment. Because of an external factor, right? You can always find the resources there, make the most of things. So I think that has come out, but I want to make that really clear. And, also, I mean, you've seen people have applied to many different schools, and I think you never know where you'll get in, right? And it takes a little bit of luck in many of these cases. If that one is not the lucky one for you, don't worry, be happy with your classmates that get into it, be happy for them. But you'll be great wherever you end up landing. Okay, so with that as background, a little bit about STEM. Is there anything else you guys want to highlight, especially for people who could be interested in STEM? I mean, as a high school student, you're not really sure. You have your interests and you're going to try to figure things out more as you go. Anything that high school students should keep in mind as they're choosing a college if they're interested in studying STEM?
I just want to say, if you don't like writing, don't think that if you go into STEM, you're not going to write or reading. I just wanted to say that.
Even in a technical school like Cal Poly, huh, Janina?
Even scientific papers all the time. Like, you just have to, you're reading papers, you're writing papers, reports. You can't escape reading or writing, no matter what you do in your life.
Yeah. And it's good for you. Awesome.
Yeah, and piggybacking on her comment, actually, on STEM, this is especially for the international students, so the ones who are not native English speakers. I loved writing growing up. I grew up speaking Spanish, and I just loved it. And then when I first began, getting my education in English, even up until now, it's still something that doesn't come easy to me. So just wanted to emphasize, say +1 to what you just said. If you have experience like that where you start writing more and then you realize, there are, I think Julia was mentioning this earlier, take advantage of the counselors or other programs, that can help you. I think we've all touched upon the importance of, doing research, etc. But just that holistic approach of finding the writing center or the, career advice center. They can provide. Stanford has, a really good center where they mentor you on writing and speaking and for presentations, etc. So make sure you map out those places in the colleges you are applying to, you're going to. Make sure they have that strong support, because those are skills that you will need for sure to thrive.
Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Okay. The other thing I would want to say is when I took biology in high school, I hated it. And now all of my classes are bio classes, and I love genetics and I loved OChem, but I didn't like them in high school. And it wasn't until I took them later in college that I think I got intimidated by it, because I didn't do that well in high school. But just a whole other thing, because my high school is just crazy competitive. But I think don't close a door if maybe in high school you decide that you don't want to go into that specific thing. I knew I really liked physics and math, which is why I chose engineering. But then the deeper I got into materials engineering, I realized I needed to take more chemistry classes. So I chose to do that, which you don't have to do at my school. And then I realized that I actually liked organic chemistry more than I thought I did. Yeah.
Yeah, I want to add to that. If you are, for example, you are in high school. Also, if you can look it up into programs, there is these summer programs that sometimes run for 8 weeks, 6 weeks. That maybe it's a good opportunity for you to apply and see if you like some of the STEM. So I think that's a good exploratory avenue that you can take as you decide whether you want a career in STEM or not. And in addition to that, most of the 4-year colleges, usually the first 2 years of your college is gonna be general education. So even though if you went for example, I wanna be a philosophy major or an English major, and then later you decide I want to be a molecular biologist, or you start with the science and then later want to do more of the other areas, it's fine. Like you still are able to like do switching majors. So it is not something like once you choose one, you are not like totally tied to that. I think that sooner that you realize that, it's gonna be easier in terms of like which classes you take and all that curriculum that you are gonna be like going through in your classes. But also, it's not the end of the world if you realize like after you start college that actually you want another major, because you can always go ahead and take those classes. But yeah, so I just want to also like add that to the conversation.
I think I can answer this question along with a Q&A question I just saw. As mentioned before, I went to a small all-girl high school. The opportunities I had to kind of explore areas in STEM were kind of limited. So I had to kind of go outside my high school. And as Julia mentioned, like these summer programs were very critical for me. I think starting very early, I was able to find free of charge programs from local universities that were kind of doing like outreach to high school students, like, hey, let's introduce you to CS, let's introduce you to robotics. And I was going to these programs for each summer, mainly just for fun. I really like CS, and I was like, hey, I want to do this. And I went to this program near a university near my home. And then I think another summer I did like cybersecurity. And these are all just programs from universities. I think the last summer, the one before senior year, is where I went to an MIT outreach program, again, free of charge. And they introduced me to more specific areas in STEM. And that's where I kind of got the interest in electrical engineering and CS, the combination. So I was kind of, trying to go outside and explore other things in my high school. Also in my high school, I mean, I really liked math and science, the classes, but I was able to get a group of girls together with the teacher in my school and build a robotics team. I didn't know anything about robotics. I just thought it looked cool. There were local competitions in Puerto Rico. So we actually got this group of girls to kind of speak to the National League, apply for materials, get the school to help us pay for materials and stuff. And we actually went to a few competitions and we did pretty well. None of us like really knew about robotics because there weren't those high level classes in math, science, to actually like explore these areas. And I think when going to college, that was kind of a bit of a struggle initially. You do get general courses the first year, which is good. But for example, because I didn't have like a very strong academic background due to my small school, I actually started, from the most basic classes, and that actually worked fine for me. So when thinking about like a program, don't think about, hey, I really don't have experience on this, or maybe I do a little bit, but I'm not sure if I should do this. The truth is you go to college to learn. And I think that's something that took time for me to kind of take in. And, don't be afraid of like, you're interested in this area, just jump in, try it out. It doesn't work for me, let's just try another thing. And of course, like first year, I think is a good year to do that. Yeah.
Wonderful. These are really excellent insights. And thank you guys all for sharing those. I'm excited to jump into some of this Q&A now. And I think I'm going to go by what is top voted for the Q&A. In the meantime, panelists, if you want to respond to some of them that are like more straightforward, you can type in your response there. But I'll focus on what's upvoted for the live Q&A. And I think in the interest of time, we'll probably just have like one or two responses on each of them. The first is related to being able to assess safety versus target versus reach school. Does anyone want to explain that?
My school had resources. We actually had a database of a history of where students got admitted. So like it came up with a little graph, and then you could see like where your GPA and your test scores. So it's like GPA on one axis, test scores another, and then it was like a trajectory. And so that's how I determined reach versus target and safety.
I think there are some tools online where you can kind of, I'm not sure if there's so much trust you can put in them to kind of put your grades in and kind of check. I think looking at admissions rate was also a thing for me. And yeah, I think that's more or less how I define them, to kind of see where, what would be a reach school for me and what would be a safety school for me. It's very personal too. Yeah.
Yeah, and hopefully your guidance counselors also can give some insight into that as well. But yeah, so it is personal, good resources online, hopefully. Awesome. The next question was addressed to Daniela, but is related to numbers of APs and extracurriculars that may or may not be accessible to you and how that kind of fits into the whole panorama and your competitiveness in the applicant pool.
I think kind of touch on a bit of points like in the, I think the last answer, but yeah, my school did not have like those great APs and extracurriculars. And like I mentioned, I had to go outside and do a little bit of research to kind of see what sort of things I could bring to the school with help of friends and students and teachers. And also for me to kind of go out and kind of explore. And I think from my understanding, I think what makes you really competitive is, I think that will to kind of, if your school does not really have those resources, that's not your fault. That's like what the school has. And I think if you're able to portray that in your application, that you actually went out of your way to kind of look for these opportunities, it kind of gets you to a competitive level of some sorts. And because in the end, you're not just comparing schools, you're comparing the student and how they're doing, sort of thing. Yeah.
Very good. We lost Busola. She said her internet keeps freezing, so she has to sign off. So I'm gonna text her. Thank you on behalf of everyone. But thank you, Daniela, for that response. And there's another question about AP classes. So I think maybe kind of just, summarizing and jumping off of Daniela, I think the general guidance is that what you want to do is really make best use of what your school and your community has to offer, right? Schools don't expect anything more from you. That's literally all you can do. But exhausting what your school has to offer and really going after external opportunities, right? If you can be part of a competition or a program that is outside of your school, that's part of like a broader swath of people, like those are really great things. But schools are like looking for people that are going to make their college even better and that have really just tried to like make the most of things. Does anybody else want to comment on that as well? I think this is like another key point.
I think on AP classes, I think I mostly took them because I was interested in them. I don't think my school had really the accreditation for AP classes that colleges would be looking for. But as Alice mentioned, definitely like exhausting those resources that you're giving is like enough to kind of show that you can go into, for example, selective college or, any type of college because you did the work. Yeah.
Yeah, another thing that I want to add, as I mentioned, I didn't went to high school here, but also when I was in community college, for all those students that are in high school, also I see a lot of these like high school students taking some community college classes. So for example, if it's hard to get an AP or sometimes I'm not very familiar with the high schools in general here, but if there is like some issues about getting those APA classes signing on, also you can go and check your local community college, and those also like look good because you were, as was mentioned before, like you went out of your way to get that education that was not in your immediate vicinity. So that's another way that you can add like extra points to the application, and also show that that you go ahead and you take the lead on your own education. regardless the circumstances that you are.
I think that's an increasing trend. I've noticed that it started in my high school, and people exhausted the classes we had. I was very lucky, and I went to a school with a lot of options in terms of APs, and they were APs with good reputations, because there are also some high schools with APs that like people don't take seriously. But I would say don't force yourself to take an AP just because like you want to take all APs. Like you should have a little bit of interest in the topic. But I will have to say that I loved like AP classes that I didn't think that I would like, that I just took because everyone else took them. For example, when I took APUSH and AP Econ, I thought those were great. Like I feel like I learned about life, even though it wasn't necessarily something I decided to study in the future.
Very good. Excellent. So we have a question related to extracurriculars, good organizations, clubs. I think Daniela, you shared starting a robotics club that, which is awesome. Anything else people wanted to add related to that?
One thing I could add there, and actually this is also connected to another question that I think touched upon imposter syndrome, but the overall idea of finding a community of support. I mean, some of you, during college will probably stay still close to friends and family, but most of you will be probably very far from, everyone that you've known and loved, and you'll be connected through the internet and can visit them if you have the financial means to do so, but you may not be able to. So it is really important to find a community of support. So while in high school, belonging to those clubs, it's really important not only on the professional side, but also the personal, because you'll be each other's cheerleaders as you go through the same process of applying to college and can learn from each other and exchange information. And once you are in college, exactly the same thing, just support each other, learn from each other, mentor each other, and just have fun together. So I just wanted to also add that perspective on the importance of having those extracurricular activities. It's not just about all that you can get academically speaking, but sometimes the personal aspect is way more important to help you truly thrive in different environments.
That's wonderful. Yeah, sometimes I describe it as like you want your high school career to prepare you for life and not just college, right? Sometimes in order to be the best prepared for college, you have to think about preparing for after college. Because sometimes we get hyper focused and then shoot ourselves in the foot. Very cool. So I want to wrap it up. I'm going to stay and answer some of these other Q&A things, but I want to thank our panelists tremendously. I don't know if any of you have other summary points that are burning that you want to throw out there. If so, unmute yourself and you have the floor. But I think this has been like a really, really great night. So many insights in there, really, like everybody should watch this recording. I'm really, really so grateful to all of you. Janita, you have something to add?
I was going to say, don't be afraid, like from my recent revelation to change what I was studying, like don't be afraid to like just go into something and then change your mind about it later. Like someone asked about about like switching majors, and the way it impacts you depends on like what you're switching to and from. But I've met a lot of people more recently who've done a lot of switching, and you'll like see all these articles of people who like are 6 years into their degree or their career even, and then decide to go back to school. And there's no like true timeline for life, that you have to follow. Like you can just go in your own path. So don't worry about having to make like the final decision like in the next year or so. You'll have time to do all that.
Wonderful.
Yeah, another thing that I just want to add is that just like adding to what Diana was saying, is like it's never too late, because sometimes we think like, oh my God, I'm in my senior year and I don't have all these things. Like it's never too late. There is always ways to get where you want to be. So that's just don't get discouraged.
Yeah, Yeah, I would say my words of advice, sometimes they ask me, what would you tell yourself 5 years ago or 10 years ago? And I would definitely say, own your awesomeness. Each one of you have accomplished so many things already. I am 100% sure of that. If not, you wouldn't be here right now watching this panel. So just own it. Sometimes we get super anxious or stressed thinking about all the things we need to do, all the boxes we need to check. And it's okay to plan. I love planning. That's great. But try not to dwell too much on that. And truly own your awesomeness. Celebrate each step. Even when you send your application, celebrate that. Go out, have dinner with your friends, with your family. Watch a movie, something that's special for you. So just own your awesomeness. You're already taking steps that sometimes a lot of people are not. So, yeah.
I would add that, just in addition to all these points that were great, just be true to yourself in terms of the application. I might mention my things, and all of us will mention like their sort of things, but each one of you is unique and each one of you stands out in some way. And in that application, you just have to put it all down and just show who you are. Because the colleges want to see you by who you are. And then in terms of, what clubs to build or what clubs to join, there's no specific recipe. You really just have to, be true to yourself and follow what are your passions, what are you interested in, and don't be afraid to, wet your feet. Just try it and be true to yourself. Yeah.
Wonderful. Awesome advice. Thank you guys so much for everything that you just imparted and for taking the time out tonight to share all of your words of wisdom. And to our attendees, thank you for coming. And I hope you connect with us if you haven't already, and stay tuned for the next one. So have a good night and take care.